And by co-living, we mean multiple people living in one house, having their own bedrooms and a little bit of shared space. What does a pad split house typically look like inside? If somebody walked into it, what does it look like?
Yeah, so we're really seeing a big boom in co-living as a sort of creative, non-traditional way to approach affordable housing. And it is very effective at that. And when we say co-living, essentially it's communal living, right? Where we have multiple working class residents, typically who are making between $20,000 to $60,000 a year is, sort of the demographic that we particularly focus on serving. And there's very limited share space on a pad split home because part of our model is actually converting underutilized space in a home. And so it's called the pad split conversion.
Hey everybody, it's Joe Seagle again, your real estate asset protection lawyer here in Florida, owner of My Land Trustee, the largest land trust company in the state of Florida, and also co-author of Land Trust in Florida, the 11th edition. If you'd like to get a copy of that, go to landtrustbook.com, get your free copy of the second chapter today, and go to Amazon, order it. If you've read the book, please give us a review. We'd really appreciate that. But today we're here on Trust This, the podcast for real estate entrepreneurs and professionals who are looking for insight and masters and tactics of how to do your business better. And today we have Emanuel Premate, the Padsplit guru, I like to call him. He's an advisor on Padsplit and everything Padsplit. And Emanuel, Big E, welcome to the show today.
Joe, thank you so much, man. Do you have a nickname? Is it Big Joe or Slick Joe? What's the nickname for you, Joe? I need something for you, man.
Big Joe, I like that. No, I'm just Joe. Just Joe. That's all I mean.
Big Joe. All right, Smooth Joe. Smooth Joe.
There you go. There you go. Oh, wow. Well, E, we're here today. I hear a lot about Padsplit. A lot of people don't know about it. They don't know how it works. They don't know what it is. And I was at a seminar that a title company put on here in Orlando a few months ago, and we learned a little bit about it, but I thought, man, real estate investors who are tired of short-term rentals and they don't want to be doing long-term rentals, they may want to look at mid-term rentals. They need to learn about Padsplit, what it does, how it works, and how you can help them. So why don't you start with just tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then tell us a little bit about Padsplit.
Yeah, will do. Well, thanks again for having me. It's an absolute joy to get to share the Padsplit mission. And my name's Emanuel Premate. I like to go by E. I like to say E keeps it easy. And I've been with Padsplit now for the last 18 months. I'm a Florida native. I grew up in Melbourne, Florida. Went to school at UCF where I studied finance and, got into corporate healthcare sales with GE Healthcare right out of college in this prestigious sales program. Had a chance to live in 7 different cities in a span of 2.5 years. So that was quite fun. But after doing that for a bit, realized that, my passions weren't really aligned in healthcare sales nor in corporate, and, made the pivot and the jump into real estate. And I started off with short-term rentals. That's how, I began my journey about 3 years ago. And it was really around last year at the beginning of 2023 that I saw the market even then was beginning to take a shift. And short-term rentals, even then at that point, were not really where they used to be. And at the time, I was, a short-term rental investor. Also had been working for Vacasa, which was the largest vacation rental management company in the U.S. And in May, had the opportunity to join Padsplit. And so for those who don't know about Padsplit, we are the nation's largest co-living marketplace. And through our platform, we now enable investors to be able to invest in co-living at scale. And essentially, we are a room rental platform that handles really the 4 core pillars of this business that have been challenging for investors to do it at scale. And so pillar number 1 is going to be the marketing. We are the market leader when it comes to room rentals, and we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars per month to be that top ranking spot in all of our 40 core markets that we're currently in as a platform, right? Orlando and all the Tampa, Jackson, and all the major cities across Florida being part of that core market. And so we also handle all the screenings as well, right? So we do the background screening, the eviction report, we handle the income verification, and we really give full control in our investors in being able to set the pricing, being able to decide who they want to approve or decline based on those member inquiries. And whenever I say members, just know that refers to people who are staying in the rooms. That's tied to our legal strategy we can talk about later on. But and also when I say units, that refers to rooms. But essentially, the third pillar that we handle is going to be the payment collection. Everything is done electronically, making it super easy. And the members, they pay weekly or bi-weekly, and the host gets paid out on a monthly basis, minus our platform fee. And then the final pillar would be the 24/7 support, right? Handling the people management. I like to say, hey, we can fix the system problem, making it scalable, but people will be people. And with that, over the last 6 years, we've developed a very robust playbook of standard operating procedures on how to deal with some of the unique situations that may come up in a co-living environment. So that's kind of a very high level, quick out of the gate overview of Padsplit, but we can definitely dive deep into it throughout this podcast.
And by co-living, we mean multiple people living in one house, having their own bedrooms and a little bit of shared space. What does a Padsplit house typically look like inside? If somebody walked into it, what does it look like?
Yeah, so we're really seeing a big boom in co-living as a sort of creative, non-traditional way to approach affordable housing. And it is very effective at that. And when we say co-living, essentially it's communal living, right, where we have multiple working class residents, typically who are making between $20,000 to $60,000 a year is, sort of the demographic that we particularly focus on serving. And there's very limited share space on a Padsplit home because part of our model is actually converting underutilized space in a home. And so we call it the Padsplit conversion. And so with that Padsplit conversion, typically maybe that living room will be converted into a room. Any other underutilized space, maybe like a family room or any open space, is potential opportunity to convert it into a room. Now, we do this for a couple different reasons. We recommend doing this for a couple different reasons, I should say. For one, it's what makes the business model profitable. If you just take a traditional 3-2 and you have a living room, because most average weekly room rates are going anywhere from about $130 per week on the low end, upwards of $350 per week on the high end, it just simply won't make economic sense to do it, to invest in it. But the moment you take that 3-2 and perhaps make it a 5-2 or 6-2, depending on the square footage and the size of that home, well, now you not only have something that is profitable, but also something that is filling for a need by providing more affordable housing. And in fact, what we find is you want to limit the amount of shared spaces because it can actually lead to disputes. It can lead to a poor member experience. Because, maybe someone invites someone over that's unauthorized and they end up crashing the couch, where if you just had a wall and had converted that to a room, it now could have also been an income source as well. So, that's part of the model, and that's where I can help. I've walked now hundreds of properties, and we have various tools and tech in place to be able to kind of get an idea of, where that conversion can be made. Of course, everything has to follow building code. That's where we do lean into our vendor network that we have. Which includes licensed general contractors, lenders, insurance providers, property managers, just a whole list of professionals who understand the Padsplit model, have gone through a training, they've been vetted by our operations and general manager team. And so, it really is offering now a unique opportunity to be able to capitalize on the need for affordable housing.
So how do they, let's say you wanted to convert that living room and maybe a dining area into a living space. What exactly would you do for those rooms to do that?
So we want to do as minimal modification as necessary, right? Typically, these are temporary walls that are being added to create that additional space. And the room furnishings are very standard room furnishings that would make it a habitable space. So bed frame with a mattress, a small nightstand if it doesn't already have a source of light in the room. adding a source of light, and a place to store clothes. So sometimes when you convert that living room, rather than building out the closet, you can just have an armoire or a dresser or wardrobe in there for them to be able to store their clothes. And there are some room requirements, right? It's not like any underutilized space is a good fit. That's where we want to look at the egress points. Is there a window in that space? Is there enough actual square footage in that room to make it a qualified room? And also AC ventilation. This is sometimes where, it is important to take a look at, do we need to add a ventilation vent or mini split into that room in order for there to be ventilation? But again, that's where I can help. And this is where our clients have seen incredible results by doing so. Occupancy rates are continuing to rise because, quite frankly, if you're a single individual right now in the rental marketplace and you're making less than $50,000 a year, your housing options are very limited. Right now, the median cost for a studio is about $1,500 per month nationwide. And a lot of these traditional, rentals and multifamily units and complexes require 3 times the income requirement. And so if you do the math, if anyone makes less than $54,000 a year, and they're a single individual, they may not even qualify for a studio apartment. And that doesn't even take into account all the upfront costs that come in to move into an apartment, which includes the furnishings, it includes the utility, startup cost, and security deposit, all kinds of things that may be not within reach for someone who's in that income demographic.
So what does this look like from the property owner side? What is your typical, number one, what is your typical profile of an owner who would be a good fit for Padsplit as a Padsplit owner? And then for the property. So let's talk about the owner first. What kind of
Sure.
owners do you typically see?
So really, anyone who's interested in buy and hold investing. I've worked with investors from all over the world, as far as Israel to Hawaii to California, to local investors here in the Jacksonville market, or based out of Orlando, and they're investing in Jacksonville. But anyone who has an interest in investing in residential properties as a buy and hold investment, this is right now the number one way to be able to cash flow on a property. Just because with the way interest rates are, a long-term rental is, it's very likely going to be negative cash flow if it's not break even. And short-term rentals, what we're seeing in that market right now with Airbnb and VRBO, are 2 negative factors. Number one, high amount of saturation. Airbnb's been in the market now for the last 15 years. There's really no shortage of hotels in the U.S., and there's just too much inventory, which is causing low booking rates for hosts who are on those platforms. And then also the fact that there's also a lot of regulation coming into the short-term rental space. And that's primarily being driven by the need for affordable housing. A lot of the major U.S. cities in which Padsplit is currently operating in have initiatives in place to create more affordable housing for the working class. And when you look at Airbnb as a business model, it kind of makes housing a lot more expensive. It's on a short-term rental basis, and it's not affordable for those who need it. Whereas our whole belief is that the people who serve our communities should at least have access to affordable housing. And now you have that power as a buy and hold investor with Padsplit. As far as which properties are a good fit, every property is different, but we kind of have a criteria that we look for in order for this to be a viable investment opportunity. So typically, we're looking at getting to at least 5 rooms. Now, again, these properties typically don't start with 5 rooms. And so that's where we really look at square footage. So at a minimum, I would say you want to look at properties that have at least 1,200 square feet. And we found that with 1,200 square feet, you can get to those 5 rooms. And again, every layout is different. That's where we have tools where we can actually create a 2D layout of that property and be able to design a diagram on what the potential conversion would look like. But anything between 1,200 to about 3,000 square feet is typically a good fit. And you want to be in densely populated metro areas because that's where there's the greatest need for affordable housing. And you also want to be close to public transit. And the reason for that, about 50% of Padsplit members do rely on public transportation. And so that's why when we're looking at a property, we're also going to go into Google Maps, hit that little transit view so we can see where the closest bus stops, and just make sure we have something about 1 mile distance from the home. Parking is obviously something you want to take into consideration. This is a topic that often comes up with Padsplit and when I'm working with clients. And what we find is that, what we recommend is to have one parking spot for every 2 rooms. And that's where, maybe we'll do a Google Street View or look at some of the Zillow listing photos and see what's there and see what we can create. Perhaps maybe, graveling out a portion of the driveway. And all of our members, when they become a member, they have to register a vehicle. And so by doing that now, if all your parking spots are filled up and a member who has a vehicle tries to go book your place, they're actually going to see a message that, hey, there's no parking spots available. You can't book this place. So that's how we kind of mitigate parking issues for our hosts. And the final thing I'll mention is HOAs. So generally, we advise against HOAs, but we also put it on our clients to do their due diligence on the bylaws and the covenants and to see, would this type of rental be allowed? Typically, HOAs generally have some form of rental restrictions. And, if they're allowing short-term rentals, then that's a pretty good sign that, Padsplit will be allowed, but it's always encouraged to make sure that's verified by the investor.
Yeah, I've seen that with HOAs because you don't want to have 4 or 5 cars parked in a driveway. HOA neighbors typically don't like that. What about you talked about making sure that they had a door and a window on every room for egress. What other safety measures does Padsplit have in place for the members who are staying there?
Right. So we also encourage all of our hosts to install electronic locks on the interior doors and exterior. Right. So both of them are going to have electronic doors. The interior doors are going to have those handles. That way they can have their own unique code to be able to access that property. I do also recommend having an exterior security system so you can keep track of who's coming in and out of the home, Ring doorbell, just those, standard home safety smart features that allow you to be able to keep track of the home. Now, on our platform, we have our support team. And so our support team is there available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for our members. And if there is an incident or if there's some kind of safety concern, our team is there to help step in, whether it be offering a transfer into another room or providing some type of dispute resolution service, to our members, because again, we've dealt with a lot of different scenarios through our 6 years of experience. And with that, we have a pretty clearly defined method on how to resolve those as they come up.
So, yeah, I figure strangers living together in a home, there were TV shows about that back in the 80s and 90s. I remember those and arguments did ensue. It wasn't unusual. How do they handle, who takes care of cleaning the common areas and things like that?
And, in our member agreement, so anytime someone wants to move into a home or a room, I should say, a member has to agree to a member's operating agreement. And this member's operating agreement is about a 7-page document, and it outlines all the terms and conditions as a part of being a member of our Padsplit LLC. So keep in mind that we don't have individual lease agreements for every person living there. There's only one lease agreement. And this one lease agreement is between the Padsplit LLC as the tenant and then the homeowners LLC as the landlord. And so with this, we've now created this member-based organization to establish relation amongst all the members who are living in that home. And so that's more a little bit about our legal strategy that we have. But part of that agreement, it states that, if they are late by a week, it's a $25 fee that's applied. And also if their balance goes over $300, they're going to be subject for termination and would have to vacate the room. And, we've done a really good job in being able to now scale with this legal strategy. With 15,000 units nationwide and 35,000 members who we've serviced, we've really become that go-to option for those who are seeking something that is affordable and something that is flexible. Because we have now those low upfront costs, it's quick and easy to get into those rooms. But not only that, now as we're growing and scaling into different markets across the U.S., we're essentially building a network of housing for working class individuals where, let's say Jane gets a job here in Jacksonville and she, for some reason or another wants to decide to move to Vegas to stay with, there because she has a friend or family member that lives there. Well, with, about, 1 day notice, she can then move over to a Padsplit in Vegas have very limited costs, and I'd have to worry about hauling all the furniture and carrying all that stuff and any early termination fee like that would be associated with the traditional rental, and be able to quickly move over to a different city. So that's kind of the long-term vision for us, is to be able to not only be the most affordable housing option, but also be the most flexible option that is quick and efficient.
Okay. So what if a member just says, I'm not moving? Do you ever have to evict, and how does that work?
Yeah, so it does happen. We can't avoid the evictions, but they happen at a much lower rate. And the reason for that is because of the systems and the processes that we have up front, from the background and screening checks to giving our hosts control and deciding who they want to approve or decline in those rooms. So, for example, in Jacksonville here, we have about a total of 1,500 units, give or take. And out of the 1,500, right now, we're at a 0.2% eviction rate. Now, before it ever gets to eviction, there is a lot of communication from the Padsplit support team with that member, right? We essentially have like an easy way or hard way discussion with the members, and ideally they vacate and they leave. Now, if they leave with the balance, that balance is going to stay on their member account for as long as they're a member, right? And if they ever want to come back to Padsplit, they would have to pay that member balance off before they can book another room. Eventually, I'm sure there's going to be changes with that. Maybe having some type of like air cover version of Padsplit available once we're at that scale. But for right now, that's the current policy. Many times they leave and just they pay their balance due, and that's fine. But if they're deciding that they're not wanting to leave, they're being reluctant, that's where we're going to communicate with the host or their property manager. Let them know, hey, here's the situation, here's what's going on, and we can provide all the documentation that they would need to be able to file that eviction, from the communication to the financial history. And you also have to think about, if it does get to that eviction, it is it should be less costly because it's one individual and it's in a room. It's not like you're trying to evict an entire family out of a single family home. The other side of it is that, with the traditional single family rental eviction, that eviction could maybe go for a month, 2 months, 3 months, who knows how long the courts are backed up. And throughout that period of time, you have zero revenue that is being generated from that property. Whereas with Padsplit, even if you have one room that's an eviction, you have these other rooms that are bringing in revenue for you to help you cover your mortgage, and your various bills. Now, with Padsplit, homeowners and hosts are going to be responsible for paying for the utilities, but that's where we have some strategies and some best practices that we can share to make sure that bill is reduced.
How do you deal with? I mean, a lot of municipalities have only so many people for so many rooms per house. How do you guys deal with those municipal ordinances that can curtail this kind of a use of or conversion of a house into essentially a co-living space like this, with multiple people, with a lot more bedrooms per the house than originally built?
Right. It's a really good question, and one that comes up often. And the whole kind of thesis and our belief here is that part of the reason why we're facing this affordable housing shortage that we are across these major metro cities is partly due to outdated zoning restrictions. As an example, here in Jacksonville, a family is defined as no more than 5 unrelated individuals. But a family is not only established through blood relation, but it can also be established through marital status, adoption, or by law. And so that final point, by law, is how we're able to have more than 5 individuals in a single family home, because now we have essentially created this member-based organization. I think kind of a real world example that I think most people can relate to or understand is kind of like a fraternity house, right? These are traditional homes in which they have fraternity members who have agreed to certain outlined agreements and terms to become a member of this organization and reside in this home. And that's how you have these fraternity homes that have 15, 20, 30 people living in them, and students, right? So it's a similar sort of concept, but again, it's applied to the working class, members, community members. And it's more than just a room rental. We do offer some additional services to our members that provide a quality experience. So we do positive credit reporting. Average member increases their credit by about 46 points after their stay at a Padsplit. We offer telemedicine services through Teladoc, and then also interest-free microloans in the event of a hardship or an accident or something like that. Our team can step in and help with that. And so because of this, about 88.8% of our members would recommend Padsplit to a friend. So we have a really high recommendation rate for those members who are staying in the homes. It's profitable for our hosts, but ultimately also I will say that there are some best practices that you want to implement in that property to ensure that people who are living there are having a good experience, right? So, for example, at my Padsplit property, I always provide the toilet paper and the cleaning supplies, right? It's not something that's necessarily required, but it's something that I like to provide because I want to give them what they need to be able to clean and minimize those disputes. I also offer monthly cleaning services as well. So I have my cleaner who comes in there once a month, cleans out the shared space, and make sure that lets me know if there's any inventory that's low, if there's any issues. And so those are just a few examples. Another thing is like labeling the cabinets based on the room number. So that way everybody has their own sort of designated storage throughout the kitchen. And that's just, again, one of many, many, many best practices that I can share when it comes to co-living, because I will say there's a little bit more work involved than a long-term rental, but certainly not nearly as much as a short-term rental. Short-term rentals are very operationally intensive. It's more of a hospitality business than it is a property management business. And with Padsplit, yes, you do have to furnish the rooms, but you don't have to provide all the small little nuanced things like the bed sheets and the pillows and the blankets, the comforters, and all that. We actually instruct our members to bring their own. So less to manage, and also many less turns. Again, our average stay in a Padsplit room is about 6 to 8 months.
Well, thanks for coming in. We're definitely going to put all your contact information down in the show notes. So everybody check that out, and be sure, if you haven't already, like and subscribe to us either on your podcast channel, write a review, tell them how great we are if you love us, keep your mouth shut if you hate us, whatever you want to do. But until next time we meet, trust this. Thanks for listening to this edition of Trust This. If you got something out of it, please press like and subscribe and give us a 5-star review to help us reach others who can benefit from this series. Until next time, keep aspiring to a better life.